Hi guys, this is Destiny from Inner World Solutions, and today I wanted to do a video about trauma just so that we all can understand more how trauma affects our lives, how we can also understand how to understand our trauma, to identify where our trauma has impacted us, and some ways of identifying it and possibly some ways of working through it. So I'm going to go into now where trauma starts. Trauma starts for many of us in childhood. Many people have childhood trauma. I know I certainly didn't skip that trauma myself. But a kind of common mistaken thought that people have about trauma is to be ashamed of it or embarrassed, and we all have it. There's no getting away from it. It doesn't pick people based on race or class or, religion. It hits all of us. So none of us are exempt from experiencing trauma in our lives, and unfortunately, that trauma plays out in various ways for all of us. So I kind of want to go into that, and especially how that trauma plays out when we don't deal with it. So when we don't deal with trauma, we end up kind of pushing it into this place in our minds where we box it away, we put it in a garage in our mind, and we decide that we're going to unpack it someday when we feel brave. So basically what happens when we do that is it causes things. It causes panic, it causes anxiety, it causes anger, it causes our emotions to be up and down and for us to feel unstable and not know why when we're doing possibly everything else that we can right. But yet this one thing seems to always come up in this repeating cycle, and we don't understand why it keeps coming up. Another way that trauma can play itself out for us in our lives, and really a common theme that I've seen with trauma, I even experienced this myself, was that I became a victim to my trauma for a lot of years. I was experiencing life through my trauma. So when I was seeing situations played out, I wasn't seeing the situation, I was seeing my trauma projected into the situation. And when your trauma is projected into a situation and you're wearing trauma glasses, as I like to call it, you are a victim. So you are seeing everything that's playing out as happening to you, people doing things to you. No one cares. I can't get out of this space. It's all negative. It's all victim mentality. It's all victim consciousness. And it's really hard to get out of that space. It's really, really hard because victim consciousness, there's no accountability. And it took me a while to get out of that space. And not only just to get out of that victim consciousness, but to realize how many layers there are to victim consciousness itself. It's not just one, oh, you leap out of it and then it's done. It is a multitude of layers where we have to remove ourselves from that by working on our trauma, by realizing where these things were, created and why we feel like victims in the first place, and how to free ourselves and rescue ourselves from that place where we're still sitting in the dark, scared, alone, and feeling like a victim. So my next point is that even if you yourself aren't in victimhood, you might have people in your life that are, and that you realize every time they tell you a story, they're always the one who someone did something to. They always got the short end of the stick. No one ever treats them fairly. And so then if you yourself bring up something to them that you don't like, or they crossed a boundary, you are also now somebody that they say has done them dirty. So I've had situations like that the same in my life, and You know, we're all at different places in our journey. We're all experiencing things differently, and we all come to a place where we're ready to deal with it at different times. So the next step in getting out of victim consciousness, like I was saying, is identifying the trauma of where we became that. So how do we identify the trauma of when we became a victim? Well, what I like to do, a process that I give a lot of my clients, is to do a trauma timeline. So if you go all the way back to when you were in your mother's womb, yes, I know you probably don't remember being in your mother's womb unless you're like, I don't know, psychic Sylvia Brown or some amazing, you know, Teal Swan, or I don't know. So, but anyway, you might actually know that your mom had a really emotional pregnancy and that could have affected you some way. You might know that your parents split up while you were in your mom's womb. You might know that there was existential negativity going on, or maybe there was, you know, something going on in the world at that time and there was already panic and energy. It's really about the energy that was around you when you were in utero, because we can still feel all that. So moving on from there, if you do your trauma timeline and you go from when you were in the womb to your childhood, identify what happened there, identify what happened all the way throughout your life, and you might notice a theme. You might go, oh wow, okay, so when I was a toddler, this happened, a teenager, this happened, an adult, this happened, and it all, no wonder why I have never been able to trust people, no wonder why I always get angry. Whatever it is that you identify, it will still be important to keep that note of where that cycle is, because if we can identify a cycle, it's a lot easier to break it. Another thing, if you're having a hard time and you look at everything and you say, I don't see a pattern here, I don't see a cycle, I don't see a pattern, I don't know what to do with this information, just look at the emotions. Go back into the experience. You don't have to go too far into it. You don't have to relive it. But just most of the time when you even think of the experience for a brief moment, you can exactly pick up what emotion came with that experience. So go ahead and do that. Identify the emotion that came with all these different experiences. Maybe there's a theme in emotions. Maybe that emotion comes up still a lot for you in your life. And there you go. You have some answers. So aside from that, after you do your trauma timeline and you do figure something out, or maybe you don't figure anything out, maybe it's all mixed up and that's still okay too. Maybe you kind of still feel confused. Well, there's a multitude of things you can do. You can do a meditation. You can go in, you can say, where is, you know, blockage in my body, or even what chakra is this affecting? And another thing, you know, that is happening in my body because of this trauma. Or if you feel like you're not able to do it on your own, that's the great thing about having healers around you. There are 5 amazing women in Satara Collective that are more than happy to assist you in any healing that you may need.